Hi, my name is Matt Kosterman. I'm a 56-year-old white guy living in Chicago, Illinois. For the first 50 plus years of my life, I didn't think I was allowed to be here. Not just here in Chicago, but here, on Earth, in a body. I suffered from depression for most of my life. I smoked my first joint at age 11 and had my first drink of Southern Comfort straight from the bottle at age 13. While the cannabis never really took hold as an addiction, I drank alcohol for the next 20 years, many times to excess. In 1998, I began psychotherapy, and in the year 2000, I started on antidepressants. I spent 12 years on them and 15 years in traditional talk therapy. Meanwhile, I built a successful business, became a father to 2 amazing girls, and rehabbed an old house in a nice suburb. I did all the things. In 2010, I went through divorce, foreclosure, and bankruptcy. Fun times. After much flailing about, I got my head on straight in 2015, only to begin experiencing severe chronic pelvic pain along with fibromyalgia. I spent nearly 3 years in the Western medical system trying desperately to heal. In 2018, out of money and out of patience, my healing journey really kicked into gear after my first magic mushroom trip. The years since have been an amazing and challenging ride. I've traversed the physical and not-so-physical worlds and been fortunate to work with many, many talented healers. As a result of all my efforts, I now find myself in a place of receiving, contentment, and prosperity, the likes of which had eluded me for most of my life. There's a man named Daryl Anka who channels a being called Bashar. Bashar describes the process of engaging with a healer, that of giving yourself what is essentially a permission slip to move towards wholeness, healing, and right relationship. This podcast is an effort to share some of what I've learned and introduce you to some of the people and ways that literally gave me what feels like my permission slip for existence. It's also an effort to continue to spread the word that the traditional Western medical system, while effective for a great many things, is not necessarily the be-all, end-all solution to every health problem, especially when the problem may be more spiritual than it is physical, as it was in my case. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoy it. Please like, subscribe, and do all the social media things that help spread the word. Share these links with people directly in your community. It is my sincere hope that you and others will benefit from my experiences. Today I'm here with Dr. Therese Rowley. She calls herself a skilled intuitive. So welcome, Therese. It's great to see you again. It's been a few years.
Thank you, Matt. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. The little backstory, I was referred to Therese by Julie Murphy, who I had on my show, I don't remember, second or third episode, who was a financial advisor. And it's always, Julie referred me to a couple of people who you wouldn't think a financial advisor would refer you to. And Therese was one of those people. And I think I had my first session with you shortly after I had visited the Andes in Ecuador and sat with ayahuasca. So I had a couple medicine experiences, so I was more open to this sort of thing. But I was very stuck at the time, very, very stuck. I was still pursuing the medical model for treatment of my pelvic floor disorder and fibromyalgia and all of the things. So I remember after we did our first session, which was, 60 or 90 minutes, whatever it turned out to, and I 2 things. I went and I stopped at my friend's house, and he remains to this day very skeptical of all this stuff, but I was telling him about it and he's like, oh, okay. And then I went home and I think I slept for 2 hours. I was exhausted and I didn't do anything. I just sat there while you were in there in the quantum doing all of your stuff. So, and then you told me uncharacteristically that I needed to come back for another session. Because of the mess I had created, the existential mess in my beingness, and so I came back, and it was great. I recorded both sessions, and I've used it as an anchoring. It was a real anchor in my journey thus far. A couple of the things that came up around being multidimensionally networked, and some other things were just really, really useful, as well as the movement of energy. So welcome. That's a long way of saying welcome, and thank you. And what I like to do with this show is, at least in this first season, is I am introducing the world to people that I've worked with that have been very helpful, and people that are outside of what you would call the norm, right? The allopathic medical model, a psychiatric model, a psychological model. And so you are well outside that, and yet you have a fascinating background working in Fortune 500 companies as a change, as a spiritual change agent, if you will. So why don't you just give us a little background on how did you come to know that you had these abilities that you have, and then tell us about kind of, what you do with them.
Well, thank you for having me, Matt. It's wonderful to see you again. It's been too long. And when I say see you, I mean I get to see your entire energy field, and it's quite fascinating. I keep telling you, I'm sure you were architecting civilizations at one point, and now you're architecting this world where people get to see interdimensionally what are the options they have versus the world they've been shown or the traditional world that they've grown up with. So I really appreciate you for doing that, and thank you for including me in it. I got into this work in very early on, and so Irish family with 11 kids, and so by the time I was 5, I had 5 brothers and sisters, 4, and no 5, and so my mother would go to mass every day. We called her Saint Jane, and she certainly was, and so I would go with her just to get away from my wonderful siblings who were very funny and really lovely, but I wanted some alone time with Mom. And so 6 a.m. seemed like a good idea. So when I was 6 years old, I started to just ask her if I could go to mass with her in the morning, and she said I could. And when I went, I just immediately felt at home there, that there was comfort in it, where other people see very strange people in robes and stained glass windows and pews. I felt like I was at home, and immediately it was a connection from my heart that I knew that somehow, of course I didn't formulate these ideas until later, but it was almost as if this was a house in which I could find my own inner family. And so going there was a comfort to me, and so I stayed going every day for probably 15, 20 years. I would go to daily mass.
Wow.
So, it never thought of it as a discipline, although sometimes it was, because I didn't want to get up. I went to Catholic school, so I had the opportunity to go to mass before school started. So I'd go by myself, and there would be myself and, maybe 10 people that were over the age of 80. I was like, okay, not a lot of friends here, but okay.
Okay.
They're all the invisible friends, but not a lot of human ones.
Right.
So, but I would start to see spirits and hear them, and I was always able then to go into my heart, and of course this is the Catholic Church, so it was Christ for me, and I would be I felt like I was tutored, and I was told, you have to see through things into their meaning, and also to be detached from things. And so, of course, because I had 10 brothers and sisters, I had so many opportunities to try out these lessons at home.
Detached.
immediate exercises after the lesson.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, so I would, go home, and if I wanted something and my brother or sister would want it, I would say, okay. And I would learn that there was a freedom in detachment, that there was some way that I got to be in the world that was disconnected from what others might have been doing in order to be good enough to be loved. And I knew I was already loved. I knew that
beyond your family of origin,
beyond my family of origin, right. Really into the mystic space. And so it was not necessarily easy. But by the time I was in high school, I was getting assignments. Institutionalize this retreat into the freshman class of this, school kind of thing. And I would do it, but
the assignments coming from the physical or from beyond the physical?
From prayer, through prayer.
Okay.
I would hear
to do this. So
very much about hearing. I could hear voices in my heart all the time. But I would also see, sometimes I would see dark energies, and I would go to my heart and say, what do I do when this shows up?
Yeah.
And I would hear, go to the tabernacle in your heart and you'll always be safe here. So there was always a source and a safety, but there was always direction for me.
Yeah.
And so I felt especially privileged because I had a place to go. And most people are searching their whole lives for a place to go.
I was going to say people meditate for years and years and years to learn detachment.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the joke about the Buddhists, that they're attached to non-attachment. They're all seeking non-attachment.
And you know what? That is so funny, because I felt this. There were times when that kind of subtlety you'd feel, and I think it was when I was in my 20s, and I had a really good priest friend, and he said, what are you attached to? I said, nothing but Christ. He goes, okay, then give up that. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. Like, I wouldn't be me without that. That's all I ever knew when I was a baby. I was a kid. That's all I understood. He said, yeah, so now you have to. And here's a priest telling me to give up Christ. And when I spent some time in Boulder, Colorado, and I remember walking down the street and I heard, if you love me, divorce me. First of all, I didn't at the time know anyone that was divorced. I didn't know what that meant. And I couldn't possibly understand what that could mean. So I had to really say, it took me a long time to understand that the purpose of all of that was for me to begin to find that every person has a unique portal to the divine, and every person deserves honor and respect for that portal. And if I was going to do, which I've done, for 30 years, the readings that I would be doing, or the work I was doing in business, that I would need to respect someone else's reality so fully that I could get behind their eyes, see from their heart, and find nothing. But you don't really need compassion when you can see the way that I see, because it's all understanding. I used to say to people, well, if I had those belief systems and I saw the world that way, I would be twisted in my shorts exactly the way that you are.
Well,
how could you not be?
Right, and yeah, that's such a great point, because we're taught, you need to have compassion for the other, and it's, while it's true, each of us, 8 billion, however many we are, we're all a separate set of eyes and ears and whatever experience. No two people are even experiencing reality from the same physical space.
So true. So
right?
true.
And you have this gift of being able to experience reality from their point of view.
Yes.
A gift, I think, Paul Selig, who I'm a big fan of, who shares as well, he's a channel from Melchizedek, and he's extremely clairaudient, clairsentient, and can put himself into and feel the other person's point of view.
Yes, and in fact, all of these, when you originally called, I said, I call myself a skilled intuitive, and the reason is because with the experience of that comes a lot of, I felt very responsible. What comes out my mouth? What do I have responsibility for in this? If someone, even thought what I said was a good idea to explore and something didn't work out for them, is that on me?
Right.
And so
who's your liability insurance carrier?
Exactly. Right? I did not find insurance for this particular industry. And I was like, hey, wait a minute, what about me?
Right.
So I've been, looking at the nuances. And also that's how I eventually became, I went through 20 years, 15 years of being mystic. And then I went through a dark night where all of it was gone all at once. And I was told when I was 14 that would be going when I was 21.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, well, kill me now, because I don't even know what that means. I don't know how to live in the world like everyone else does because of the way I see it and what the richness of the life I have inside of me.
Yeah, you were in it, not of it, from the get-go.
From the get-go.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to do that, but then it happened, and I asked, well, do I, it's gone. Like, I couldn't see things, and I couldn't hear things, and I couldn't feel things. So it was as though I was entering the world as a baby. I was like, what? Oh, no wonder people think, like you could separate sex and relationship. Who knew? Who knew those two could be different? I mean, what? Wait, money isn't the same as the richness of being in, like, what? Wait, what? And so,
I mean, almost as if a normal, quote unquote, normal person losing their sight, losing their hearing at age 21.
Right. And
having to be in the world a new way.
And I was like, so I said in prayer, well, should I volunteer more? Should I be like a better person? Did I not do something wrong? And what I heard is the gift is mine to give and mine to take away. It wasn't it wasn't like, oh, poor you, which was what I was hoping for.
Of course. Victim consciousness.
Could I get a little compassion? How about you? And it was like, nope, this is how it is. And so I was like, okay. But I was directed to read the autobiography of Therese Rowley, which I did at the time, and actually finished it because I was reading it and I missed the train I was supposed to take, and it caused me to have to sit there for a long time. And I understood so much of what she was saying, and so much of what the mystic journey was. And she was the one who talked about the dark night of the soul, and John of the Cross being one of her friends, also being very famous for talking about the dark night of the soul. And that's how I was like, oh, that's what it is. So how long is this going to last? A couple weeks, a month? I'm good with that. Sure. I can bear down for that long.
Yeah. Right.
So
right.
these many
just give me the end date.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is many decades later. I'm still waiting for this.
Yeah.
Like, can you please answer that prayer? So, but it was a rite of passage. And what I ended up doing as a result of this, the absence of my skills, the absence of my abilities and senses, was that I began to have experiences. I was directed in a dream to move to Boulder, Colorado, which I did. And then I started to have a lot of different experiences, voices that wanted to come through me, and this idea of channeling and feeling someone else's consciousness in me, and writing about the future and what was going to happen, and feeling taken over with my right. And I still was a mystic Catholic from the south side of Chicago with my MBA, and I didn't know what this was.
So so let me just back up. So you went the traditional route of you finished high school and you went to college, and
I did. I went to I got a degree in business. It was psychology and business, and then I got a MPA, public administration master's for nonprofit marketing kind of things, and then I got an MBA at Kellogg. When I was doing consulting work, I ended up being a consultant at a Big Six consulting firm. I started at a bank, and then I went. What I did is I asked myself, "What's the thing I don't know anything about?" And I was like, "Money. Okay, I'm going to go work for a bank, and I'm going to get to know that." So that's how come I actually went to the bank, and then I went to consulting, and I loved it. Mostly because it's a systemic look that allows you to rise out of the moment that you're in and take a look across industries, take a look at the future, the trends, look at the past, look at what does one change in a company mean that can leverage an entire transformation.
Okay.
And I got fascinated with the transformational process. And so my MBA was in strategic planning and IT. And then I went to Boulder, and I ended up learning about 50 different kinds of alternative healing I was studying, because I thought, what's going on with me? And I don't have any idea. I should say there was a little bit before that, is after I was at a big consulting firm, I ended up getting a job in New York with a guy who I took entrepreneurial training to become an entrepreneur when the word had just become a word.
Sure.
There was entrepreneuring, and I ended up in this amazing place. And the gentleman who was the former Time editor of Time magazine owned 5 mansions on the Hudson, and he did executive conferences there, and he used to bring in the brain trust that was absolutely stunning. People who became famous later were just seeding. He was just bringing them all in there. So I ended up meeting the 7 women who started the New Age movement. I ended up meeting all of these gentlemen who were, going to be, I think, the center of business and what it meant to learn in business, and everyone was just
leading edge of thought.
Yeah, leading edge thought. They had tent shows with leading edge people from around the world. So I got a dunk into that, and then that gentleman asked me to be part of his organization to help. It was called the Tarrytown 100, 100 of the most innovative CEOs in the world who wanted to do high integrity business. So that was consciousness in business in the 80s, which was pretty unheard of. At the time, one of the guys was the head of an airlines, and he was all about the people. And I had just done a study as a consultant that said that the most important thing in business was information and technology. and that's what the CEOs and the
well, sure, because in the 80s it wasn't conscious business. It was he who dies with the most things wins.
He who dies with the most information about the most things wins. Yeah, and so that's what I just finished studying, and then I'm talking to these people, and so it was an amazing experience, but it dunked me into this consciousness that I didn't even know existed. And that's what I brought with me when I went to Boulder. And then I started to have these many, many different kinds of energetic kinds of experiences. I had no idea. Also,
through the trainings that you were doing.
They would just come to me. Either it would be dreams. For example, I was with my then fiance, and I had a dream that I was brought through a field at dawn with a man who had a turban, and I was 18 and I had long hair, and he brought me to the hospital, and he directed me to put my hands on people and to just before the doctors came in. And so I did, and I did exactly as I was instructed. And then he said, let's come back because you don't want anyone to know, we're here. Okay. He seemed to be the head of the hospital or something, but he was still, had some important. So he brought me home, and then I saw a fireplace with a mantle on it, and there was a book open, and there were symbols on the page. And I said, I know this language. I can't remember what it is, though. So I got out of there, and I thought, what was that language? And I woke up thinking, what is that? What does that say? I went downstairs, and my fiance was drawing ancient Chinese calligraphy. He was taking a class in that. And I said to him, wait, those were the symbols in my dream.
They were in the book.
That was the symbol in the dream. What does that mean? And he traced it with his fingers, and he said it means healing hands. And so all of that started to come to me like, I don't know what healing hands are. I'm a mystic. I pray.
You pray, okay.
I'm good at praying.
You hear things and you pray.
Super good at praying. When I ask God, like, what do I do with my life? Like, what am I so good at? I heard prayer. I'm like, I cannot get an MBA in prayer. No. Nobody is going to hire me for prayer.
Although I do know a woman who has an MBA in compassion.
Okay, that would have been close, but that didn't exist when I was there. I would have been there. I was like, I'm not sure this is helpful. Let me, my ROI on that is so it's going to be invisible anyway. So
it's a big ROI, but it's invisible.
Exactly, and that's been the bane of my existence my whole life. Most of what I do is invisible. So how do you show everybody what you're doing when it's invisible? So I studied a lot of different kinds, and the most impactful way that remains today, which I think is the organizing principle for transformation is somatics. Anything that's body-centered. And for me, at one time I was with this woman who said she was a psychic, and she said to me, boy, having a body for you is like having shit on your shoe. You just can't wait to get it off and move on. And I said, well, okay. I'm gonna cop to that. And but I had to learn, what does it mean to be in a body, and the limitations and how slow the body vibrates versus the mystic space where you're in quantum reality and everything is present time. And I used to call it the realm where words no longer have meaning. And then I spent the rest of my life coming back and using words to make meaning of that realm. Sure. And so that was kind of how the whole thing went from the childhood on.
Although my understanding is we're moving into this place, this less dense reality where thoughts are more quickly manifested into reality.
Because we have we're moving towards a critical mass of people who are both conscious or teaching it, so that people are open to it. Yep. And unless there's a critical mass of energy that's ready for that can't happen. It will stay in and what we want to do is keep bridging that world, one world to the other, until we do as the non-speaking, what's diagnosed as non-speaking autistic kids are doing, which is communicating with each other purely from their heart.
Right, which I totally want to get to that for sure. But first, just to bridge the gap in between, from studying and learning this energy in Boulder, and then when did you start? Did you actually start doing sessions for people, or were you consulting and doing sessions? How did that all come about?
I was doing a lot of work for myself, energy mastery sessions with various people who were pretty hidden in the world at that time. But I ended up going back into business, and I became a consultant inside AT&T to transform organizations. So I wanted to do enterprise-wide change before it was a thing. And it was just at the time when people were doing downsizing, and that was a big deal. But I wanted to understand all the politics of the process and how the transformational process worked at a meta level. And then also, I did begin to do readings. I knew I didn't want to channel because that's a very particular kind of surrender. And I was exhausted afterwards when I would do it. And I found that that wasn't going to work for me. And so I learned that there were many different ways we have choice about how we express spirit and how we might use it in our work. And so I decided I needed to be very conscious about what I tried and then what I wanted to do and what felt right to me. So I did end up started to do readings for people. It was almost like I couldn't help myself. I mean, I would be at a boardroom, and I would see someone at the end of the table, and I remember coming up to this woman at the break and saying, "I'm sorry, do you have a migraine headache?" And she goes, "How'd you know that?" I go, "Your brother really wants your forgiveness." And she go, "Oh my God." And then I go, "Can I put my hands on your head?" She goes, "That's weird." I go, "I know, for me too, but please could I?" Because I was still not understanding healthy boundaries when it came to empathy, which is something I've taught since then. But I've had people
you just were like, I just got to get it out of there.
It's not about you; it's about me. I really need to feel better, and you need to stop feeling like that, so I can. I know, and I've done readings with people who have had near-death experiences, and some of them come back, and the veil has been lifted, so they bring back energy that doesn't belong to this world, so I can help them embody and help them understand where the boundaries are and how to practice their muscles so that they can continue to have choice for that. So at the time, I spent several years in AT&T doing that internal consulting so that I could. But it was spiritual for me still. I was grounding. I was also teaching. I was teaching the master's program in organizational development and human resources. So I was doing some retreats for the people there. And it would always get a little odd. My retreats would go from business to just a little off script.
Especially for, what's this, 30 years ago?
Yeah, that's
or more. Yeah.
Right. And so they would go off script. And I would eventually allow more and more of that, but then I learned how to put not disclaimers, but perhaps a little more context around what they could expect.
Right.
And so then I came back to Chicago.
They're going to more of a seance than they are a retreat.
Exactly.
In fact, right?
Yeah,
we a Ouija board.
We're going to just say that it's going to be a little more emotional than most of your retreats, or it could be. It might not be, but it could be.
Yeah.
But then when I came back, I actually had chronic fatigue for a couple of years, and I was diagnosed with all 11 of the. You only needed 8 symptoms to be diagnosed, but I'm an overachiever, so I'm going for all of them. And during that time, I was hearing that I was being reprogrammed. It was almost like your cells are being reprogrammed to emit a higher frequency of light so that you can heal at a different level. And in order to do that, just shut up and sit down.
Yeah, right.
You cannot do anything. You have got to stop. And so when I finished that, I was still working in business and have been ever since. But always.
How many? And so how long were you down and out? Because this is
a couple of years.
A couple of years.
I was on disability, and I was out literally down for the count for 2 years.
For 2 years. Yeah, and so I wanted to pause there because this is a thing in the world these days. There's a lot of people with chronic fatigue syndrome. I suffered from it to a degree. And I think there's a sense that there's something wrong. And you were fortunate to have the connection to hear that, no, there's nothing wrong, but your body's being changed and your form is being changed.
Yeah, and for sure it felt like something was wrong every day. But at this end, it was painful and it was awful. And at the same time, what do you get to learn every time you have one of those healing journeys? When you don't know what to do, you start to explore. And in our society, that's a really rare quality, and it's the one that brings us the most spiritual connection, because we have to go to our hearts to say, well, what makes sense here, or how do I even do this? And asking that question alone begs the question of, how do I know what I know?
Yeah.
Which is in all my courses what I teach, is I don't really care if you become a great reader and you can read energy. I want to know how you know what you know, so that you know that, because that's what's precious for you.
To anchor that knowing.
And to be able to have the communication of spirit through that portal at choice. and that you're not looking for like that place again. Like, where does it come in? You practice it enough that you know what portals are yours, what truth belongs to you uniquely. And so that's the thing. And I think that these illnesses often cause us to reach out in ways that are, and what really happens is that there's a death.
Yeah.
It's a death of a way of being, and it needs to be grieved. You're never going to go back there.
Right. And what are you willing to give up? Right. You have to. I mean, in my own journey, I had to look at potentially giving up photography because I was in a lot of pain, and it's turned out I didn't have to, and I'm glad for that. It's worked, but there was a willingness. I've had several tests of, are you willing? Which way?
Right.
Is it left? Is it right?
Isaac, are you really willing to kill your son?
Yeah,
that part of you that you're so attached to. But you often find that what happens is that you do have to say yes to the biggest fear that you have. And then when you say yes, you move to a place of that detachment, that then when that thing comes back, you can hold it in a different way, and you can it brings more love to you as you bring more love to it and others.
100%. Yeah, my work as a photographer is completely transformed to from where I once was.
Yes.
In the places that I'm being sent and the work that I'm doing.
Yes, and it's because I do remember my daughter was little, and I adopted my daughter from China in my 40s, and when I was having an experience with someone, I went to lunch with a consultant, and he was really almost like asking me, how can I move forward? And I was saying to him, well, you can just say yes to this. He's like, well, I don't know how. I go, you don't have to know how. Just say yes. And when I said that to him, I saw this dark energy pass through his eyes, and I knew at that moment that was out of my league. I didn't know that. I had worked with dark spirits before, because darkness is, for me, it's fear, feeding on fear. So I look at it as a fear, and let's go look at the fear underneath it, no matter how scary it looks on the outside, what costume it's wearing. What's the fear? Anger covers sadness, covers fear. Let's go to the fear. But for this one, I knew I didn't know it. And I just said to him, I have to go. And I left. I literally my body was shaking. And I thought I couldn't help him, because there was something about that. And I reflected on the Gospels and how the apostles went to Christ and said, we tried to get this demon out of people or help, and we couldn't do it. And Christ said, that's a different kind. Jesus said, that's a different kind of demon. Like, let me take care of that one. I got that.
Send in the big guns.
Bring it. I got that. I guess send in the big guns. So,
like, you can't go to, you can't help in healing. I see in healing work and medicine work and even in psychology, you can't take people somewhere you haven't been.
Right. And there's a discernment process always. Since the time I was little, that was what I was told. It was about discernment. If you see a dark figure and you think that that's scary, what are you going to do? You're going to think, that's really scary. Well, then you give it power.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have power. It's a fear, and it's a personified fear. So we can look at it and say, okay, that person is really scared and terrified, and so they're looking like that. But this one I just knew was something I hadn't done. So it happened a couple of times, and it was very odd. And someone called me then the next week from a friend of mine from Colorado, and she said, okay, she's an intuitive as well, and she said, I just got something, and you're supposed to be someone who can choose to depossess people. That's like on your thing
on your resume.
And I was like, yeah, no, that's not on my resume. That's like not even going to go on my resume. She goes, well, you're being called to it. And I started thinking, well, okay, well, I just had these two experiences where I saw these entities that I couldn't discern as safe for me to engage, and I had to back out. And so she said to me, well, you have to not ask for money for this. You have to do it for free, and you have to be willing to do it. And she said at the time, full time.
Full time.
Yeah. I was like, well, I'm fully financially responsible for this 3-year-old or 4-year-old, and she's got a long way to go.
Yeah.
And if I don't make money on that, and that's all I do, this is a real, dilemma. And so it was less like my logic I couldn't wrap my head around.
Because as much as you live in the quantum, you also still live here, and you got to put food on the table. And
Hello, and maybe I'd be willing to take the risk if I didn't have a 3-year-old that I was responsible for. But I thought, okay, well, all right. So I made a list of here's A, all the things I want in my life and what that should look like, and here's B, what she said. And so I put those out there, and I had sat with it. And I was thinking about it, and I heard the voice say, if you say yes, you can't do it out of gratitude. You can only do it out of love.
Okay.
love for my connection from my heart to the
To the
Creator is the only way I could do that. I could not do it because I was grateful for this, and therefore I'm going to pay you back by doing that. Not going to happen. And I was like, oh, okay. Sat with it, and finally I was like, okay, this is impossible, and I have no idea, but okay, A. But I really want B, but I'll go with A. I'll say that's it. And
A being
the one that was, well, it was actually B. B was like what?
the depossession.
The depossession
job. You're taking the depossession job.
I was taking the depossession job. Yeah.
You got the call from the headhunter.
Exactly. Look, I have nothing on my resume, but if you think so, okay, we're going to take that leap. And as soon as I did this, as soon as I finally sat down and said yes, I felt this wall of light. It was almost like being behind a wall of a waterfall.
But it was light.
It was light, like liquid light, and it was so powerful. And I heard, "No one touches her; she's mine." Mm. And I've never felt so safe in my whole life. And so since then, I've had this. Whenever someone comes in with a reading, they may say, "I have this problem with this person." I'll look at that person, and think, "Oh, they're possessed." Okay, well then you brought them in, but I'm gonna work on them. Right? Mm-hmm. I'm not charging for what I'm working on them, but I'm going to work on them, and then we'll do you.
We'll do you, yeah.
Okay. So I've been doing that ever since, and it's more about discerning and helping people. In my book, Mapping the Reality, I talk about the difference between attachment and possession and how that works. And when you really take no responsibility for your life and you say, I don't want people to see I'm afraid, I don't want people to see I'm terrified, and I'll make a quote-unquote deal with the devil where I'm just going to use what I call an intelligence strategy for emotional survival, which is my defense Hollywood front. I'm just going to make people believe that, and these energies in the world will vibrate exactly the same frequency that you're putting out that fear and terror, and say, okay, let's join together and make it even bigger and stronger and more powerful, which is what we have now in our, in our political scene.
We're going to be large.
We're going to be, and everybody, and the more people that believe it, the more people the more powerful that person looks.
Because then those people, the entities attached to them, the energies attached to them.
They might attach to them. This person would be possessed because they've given up all right to their will. And they've said, hey, you know what? I'm looking really good here. You take over. Yeah. You really do this well. You go for it.
You go for it.
And so really what we're talking about is where in that person's energy is there any will left to ignite their light and to find their candle. And that's all it takes. It's just one little calendar. I pray for all of the leaders, particularly dictators, that they experience tenderness and kindness in their hearts, because I know if they do, they can't behave the way that they do, can't make the same choices. And so it's the same thing as uplifting their spirit and asking for the grace to go in at moments where they're undefended, so that there's if there's even a tiny bit, I want to be the force for.
Like the mountain climbers, right? They're looking for just the little crack.
Just the crack, so I can put my hands in there.
Just to grab a hold of that.
Yeah, and I do put, even in depossession work as well, put angels, archangels in front of me. I don't show up I'm a facilitator, just as I was in business, facilitating
You're not doing it.
I'm not doing it.
Yeah,
I'm not taking things out.
Yeah.
Although my hands will move like that, and I will know exactly where I'm going in your field, and I'll tell you. But it's that's the quantum entanglement.
Yeah, it's not Therese,
but it's not
the personality self.
That's definitely not.
You didn't learn it in grad school.
No, I absolutely did not learn that in grad school.
So that's your work today, and then you said over the past several years, I don't know how many you've started to work in the autistic realm and the neurodivergent, quote unquote neurodivergent, area. So tell
important.
So and did this lead to that? Was it how did?
When I was working in business with leaders, I was always working to align their inner and outer world. So we talk about their soul work with the "You Are Here" button on their soul work, and then what was going on strategically in their business and how that related and how they could prepare themselves to expand in the directions of the strategies for business, or how they were intermingling, and whether it was, and I still do this with a lot of business clients, whether it's a venture partner or it's the top fit for a particular position, or they're having conflict with a vendor or whatever. I can look at what other things are going on in that relationship that you call that person in, and then we can talk about the reconciliation process, so that as you do that within yourself, you actually don't need to do anything with that person on the outside a lot of times, and the relationship changes, because as above, so below is within.
Yeah, I mean, I had that. When I came to see you, I still had not come to forgiveness for the gripes I had with my parents, my family of origin. And it was shortly thereafter, it was between your work and then finding the work of Paul Selig and reading this and going, well, yeah, like, I'm doing this. Like, nobody else is doing this. It's me. And why don't I just fucking let it go? What would that look like?
And now you know.
And now I know. But it wasn't, it sounds easy. It's not. It can be very difficult, and it can be very simple. But
yeah, and I heard this saying. I was watching The Chosen, and one of the things that I heard from The Chosen was that saying you're sorry is necessary for what you've done, but forgiveness is a gift, and you don't have to give it. But if you do give it, that grace that comes back to you grows inside of you in a way you can't imagine.
Yeah.
It's always a freedom. It always increases freedom. It always increases grace in your own life.
Well, because the flip side is what you damns you back.
Right. Well, and
I mean,
why did you, well, the fascinating thing about all of the readings I've done, like the 12,000, whatever readings I've done, I'm looking at why did you pick someone? Because we're learning through contrast and polarity. So you might be a victim with someone who was a persecutor, but why did you call that in? And then we go into other lifetimes, if you want to call them that, other stories that are resonant in someone's field. And I'll find something that a person has done something they felt so guilty for that they said, I'm never going to use that power again. I'm not going to forgive myself for what I've done, but I will never use my power in a way that hurts people like that.
That's one of mine. That's one of mine.
Yeah. So then they go, that's a karmic choice. If you don't forgive yourself, the only thing you can do is go into a karmic journey, which means that you just repeat the point of that
the cycle just
in a different drama, but with the same point, is that can you forgive yourself? Because if you don't, what you're doing is you bring in a projection of yourself. That other person looks like you used to look. Like you were the king and you did bad things. Now you attract a narcissist and you go, look at him, what's wrong with him? And so you get to judge it because you're preventing yourself from expressing that kind of self-focus. You see it in another, you get to judge it because you've told yourself, hey, I'm holding myself back from that. What's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you?
But I have to attract it because I'm a whole person and you're my shadow.
Yeah.
And now I have a contract with you that says you keep playing that until I can't stand it anymore. We have to have this dynamic until I finally, whatever.
Right.
Now I forgive myself. And guess what? I'm going to start focusing on myself a little more. I'm going to start honoring myself a little more. If you need something, I'm going to say, you know what? I got a date with myself for some tea. And you practice this muscle of self-honoring, and not self-absorption, but you come to the place where you say, if I've learned through contrast, I see my shadow, I see myself. Well, I get to forgive my shadow because I was my shadow.
Yeah.
And I get
we've been all of it.
And in that particular one, you resonate with the story that I was that. I know I was that. And so now I got to forgive you unless I got to forgive you. So I got it. So, and then what happens is the integration, which is so beautiful that once the forgiveness is done, the integration comes in a place where the person's never been before. Because if you've been studying what it looks like to be self-sacrificing, and there's love through that. There's also love through being the guy that totally focuses on self-love, right? It's a different kind. And then when you bring it together, what does that unique matrix look like in you that has never been on the planet before, will never be again, because you are so unique and you're bringing these together, these qualities together in a way, and you're going to learn about love through that new integration.
And who knows what, and you're going to learn through it as a personality self and as a soul self.
Absolutely.
At a higher level.
And hopefully those things begin to weave into each other with more coherence, because we're always looking for how the story of our soul is the story of our lives and vice versa. And when we can get there, then we can ask different questions, like why is this happening to me? Although I was, my dear friend Carol Mace, who I love, she wrote the foreword to my book, and she says, you need to stop asking why things happen. And I said, that's the only thing I do, Carol. That's the organizing principle of my work. I keep looking at people going, well, why is that going on? Why is that happening? Well, why is it?
And that leads you, that's the threads that you follow.
So I've been doing this work with leaders for a long time, and at one point they started asking me to look at their children. So they would give me the name of their child, and I would look at their child, and I would see so many things. I could, and I can also facilitate some healing there. So sometimes I would help the child's behavior or their symptoms, but mostly if there's OCD, but I would say, here's why they're the behavior looks like this because here's what they're seeing, here's how they're feeling about it, here's what they're referring to, and they might
because you have this unique ability to essentially see through another's eyes,
see through the eyes of those children.
Yeah.
And so then after a while, it was in the early 2000s, I started doing talks on multisensory children in Zen Parenting Conference and, IMS, the Math and Science Academy. And the parents would actually be like crying because I would say, when we talk about things like ADHD, that is a sort of human perspective of not knowing that someone's third eye is wide open and that there are particular qualities to that intelligence that allows them to merge with many dimensional realities, which particle physics has proven mathematically are simultaneously occurring, and that we can take some things from there, and they are taking things constantly, but they think that's normal. So
this behavior then gets pathologized.
This is the paradigm shift. So as I'm starting this platform for parents who really believe in embracing the uncommon gifts of their children and really looking at neurodiversity as multisensory intelligence, that's where we've started to look at how to flip the paradigm. Why? Because almost everything, and I would challenge anybody and I would invite anyone to show me where diagnosis is not done based on behavior. And my only question always was, well, but why are they behaving that way? I had clients come to me and say, well, I'm clinically depressed, which is like a noun. Are we done? What is that about? What do you mean? Why are you clinically depressed? Are you happy that you find? Yes, I'm happy I found. That doesn't mean anything. What it means is you found your expression of what's actually going on that you don't know, that we want to explore so we can get to the root cause so we can actually address it. And so I've been absolutely crazy watching this pathology based on a DSM that was created in 1952, I believe, where there were no computers in society, there was no context.
Communication.
And I also know that there's something called appreciative inquiry. David Cooperrider created this in the 80s, and it speaks to how we, let's just say, we grow in the direction that we most persistently ask questions about. And if we persistently ask questions about what's wrong, we will find many more things that are wrong. And then if we continue to ask that question, we will find more things that are wrong. So the idea is questions are what's life-giving, what's possible, what's going on here.
What's going right.
What's going right here,
What's the benefit? Because we're in a duality. You can always, you want to chase after the dark, you want to chase after the light.
It's a choice.
I mean, I work with Renee McKenna, who I interviewed, and I'll go in and I have this situation, Renee, and I want to, okay, let's look for the shadow. She says, I like to look for the light.
There we go.
I like to look for the light.
Yes. And so we're creating this whole platform for parents that is based on when you come in, there's an intake form. The intake form is, when is your child most happiest? When is your child most joyful? What is the environment they most love? What are the things that you can see that nobody else does as well as they do? And the intake form itself is based on the fact that we're not talking about there's nothing wrong with your child.
It's like you took the DSM and made a negative of it.
Yes, exactly. Or a positive of it.
Well, yeah, right. yeah, right.
Exactly. So, and then these diagnoses, and then we have the right to drug these kids, and I can see the effect of the drugs on the energy of the child and what it's doing for them, and I can see, I think one of the first times was when a woman talked about her child, and I was looking at what the child was seeing, and I said, this doesn't make any sense. And she said, what? I said, based on what your child is dealing with, and I named it all the conflicts, there should be a great deal of activity in their amygdala, and it's blank. The amygdala is completely dark. I said, I don't. This doesn't make any sense. Based on the nervous system that your child is dealing with, this isn't coherent. She said, oh, I forgot to tell you, he's on medication. And that's the first time I knew medication was affecting.
So it was shutting down.
It was shutting down the amygdala.
Activity.
Yes, and it made sense.
But the nervous system outside of it, the enteric nervous system, was still
crazy
on fire.
It was highly active. And so that's when I started taking, like when I do a reading, I say, what drugs are they on? And I take the drugs energetically off the field so I can read what's underneath it, and I can see the coherence of that and understand that there's always a coherent reason why the behavior is what it is. If you're seeing
based on the way they perceive the world.
Thank you. So the whole thing is based on what are we learning in this? Is what's the inner world of the child?
Yeah.
How do they perceive? What are the capacities and how do they process? And if we can understand that, I want to put together discovery labs so that neuroscientists can look at multisensory intelligence through the eyes of these kids. And what are they, because we say, oh, well, they've got ADHD and they've got autism and they've got, they have OCD, but they are really, also they're good at school, and I mean, they're better than anybody in like math, and they do the same. Like, that's how we talked about them.
I mean, the word, I don't know when it was coined, but like the idiot savant, right?
Yeah.
Remember, was that
Right.
the 80s? Probably back when we
Right.
were, trying to accumulate all the things. But,
Right. And the word idiot was first.
yeah.
Not savant.
Not savant.
And so I don't understand it when you have these brilliant children who are trying to take that kind of brilliance that they're engaging in the quantum field. They're taking things outside of what our very slow human thought process could process.
Dense form.
And they're bringing it into a body that's very dense. And they're trying to interpolate that frequency so that they can regulate, and they can't. And so now we have to say, well, what are the developmental pathways for these children so that they can understand how to bridge the world between what is human and the body and the slowness of it, and using those channels of sensory with the multisensory way they perceive the world.
Because we were talking earlier, you were talking about somebody who they're barely in their body. Like they're almost like, I didn't really want to come.
Well,
but I'm here.
Yes, and I'm so grateful. I can totally relate to these kids, because I used to say, who signed this contract? It was forgery. This was not me. I did not say I was going to be a human being. What in the world is going? I mean, this is the slowest way I've ever so I would get crazy, because I would be in mystic space and come into my body and be completely depressed. It's like, oh my gosh, and I would watch people and say, oh, that person is sending so much love to this other person. And I could see all the personality and belief systems that were in the way of receiving it. And it would break my heart.
Yeah.
Because I could see that the love was right there, and that they couldn't open and receive it. Oh my gosh, it would be so hard. And I always wanted to emancipate that child within that just wanted to express and receive that love. So I do understand these kids and their reluctance to do it. And I call those kids quantum, the ones that are typically diagnosed as autistic or non-speaking autistic. They live so much in the quantum field, and that the speed and velocity of the frequency of that reality is dissonant with the reality in the body.
Yeah.
So the first question I would ask, and have asked those kids, is, do you want to? What do you want to get in your body? Because you can always be a typer if you're I call it quantum multisensory intelligence, because they live in the quantum. Do you want to?
And the typer would be
body?
they use typewriters to express,
because they're non-speaking.
nonverbal.
So they're shown how to use their hands to use the keyboard.
And the bigger question is, what can we as society learn? What can they bring to us to move things forward from home?
Right, from home.
from home.
From the quantum
field.
field.
The quantum field.
Well, yes.
that we are not yet capable of tapping into.
And they are this sort of in-between place where we're moving from the human into this, quantum human, right, as it's been called by many people, where we're actually, as happened when I had chronic fatigue and many other people, when you're really being sort of reprogrammed so the cells of your body can emit light at a higher frequency. It's kind of like that. Mm-hmm. And so these children are already vibrating at those frequencies. And as we examine their intelligence and explore what they have to teach us, we can also find out how we can support them, because their intelligence will tell us that as well, instead of learning who they are by their behavior and then telling the teachers how to teach them,
right.
And leaving them in the corner because they're just not that bright, or the beautiful, hardworking teachers that so much patience and I have so much respect for, that are really working as hard as they can to see these children as gifted and work through that.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine, Nina, one of my makeup artists, who's a nursery school teacher, and she says she can see, like the teachers she's an assistant, I think, and the mom will wonder why the kid is misbehaving, and she's like, it's because of your energy.
Yes.
Because of what you're holding.
Yes, and
they're so empathic and they're so connected at that level.
And particularly with the mothers. So most of them are highly connected, almost symbiotic with the mother's energy. And so, and this is actually true of any parent, and it's a real spiritual opportunity where a parent understands that if their child is empathic, it means that they're picking up energy, not only the feelings of what's in the room, but mostly unspoken feelings. So when I'm arguing, with your father and I'm saying things are just fine,
Right.
the dissonance that they feel, which is both confusion and pain, because they feel the pain of what's going on instead of, honey, we're having a hard time right now, but it doesn't mean that we don't love each other and that we're not trying very hard. And
But they can feel the underneath, but really it does mean that.
yeah. And if they can, the more honest you can be, the more they can put together their feelings with not crazy.
Yeah, it actually matches reality.
Which is
the reality as they're perceiving it.
Yes, and that's the dissonance. Suicide is the leading cause of death, third leading cause of death between the ages of 10 and 24 now. Why? Because the dissonance they feel between the world inside of them and what the signals are outside are so wide that they can't make that can't make that bridge. And they feel that they're, either being told this is all happening and this means this on the outside. I'm not like that, so I'm not loved. I don't look like that, so I'm not loved. I'm not acting like that, so I'm not loved. I'm not getting those grades, so I'm not loved.
Yeah.
And then this experience on the inside and what's possible there. So what we have the opportunity to do is to move into our own truth and ask the question, how can I express to a child something that's dissonant in me? And allow them to know that sometimes as human beings we're dissonant. Sometimes we don't want to feel this way, but we do.
What we do.
And then the child goes, "Oh, okay. Well, human beings can do that. The human being
allowed.
Yeah,
I'm allowed to."
Yes,
Yeah.
and so now that's the most difficult thing is that the parent and so we are creating videos like if you are a quantum and you have an empathic child, if you're an empathic and you have a child who I call imaginal, which is typically diagnosed as ADHD, they're very different orientations and perceptions of the world. So what do you do? What are the things you can do to understand their inner world and to help them understand yours?
Sure. Yeah, I know and I hope she won't kill me for saying this, but my oldest daughter, when my former wife and I were going through our, troubles 15 years ago that led to the divorce, she said she would go into the office and look around to see if we were moving. Like she knew something was afoot.
Yeah.
Right? They know. They know.
Because they're energy beings until they're told. That's why most kids see people on the other side until they're about 5, and then they stop. They stop at 5 because they go to kindergarten.
Yeah,
and nobody does that in kindergarten. You don't do that sort of thing.
We don't talk to our imaginary friends anymore.
That's right.
Well, yeah. Have you seen the woman? She's over in Europe, in England, and she runs classes for kids where they blindfold them and teaches them they can play catch. And they draw things, and it's amazing.
Yeah, her name is Nicola Farmer, and she's also agreed to be on our site, to help parents, to teach parents how to do that for their children.
Okay.
Because if the children are already leaning into the quantum field as their norm, then if the parents learn how to respect that and honor that, and then they learn these developmental tools and exercises, they can then be joyful in helping their child develop what they're normally good at.
Right. Instead of programming it out of them like we've been doing for the last 400 years.
You won't be successful unless you. And people say that with the world that was, and that may even have been true, but now we have the power of AI that's only going to transform our world in ways we can't imagine.
No idea.
And so we need to have children, like we can't solve our global problems right now with any kind of logic or linear solutions. We need their quantum solutions.
We'd have done it by now.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Right?
Yes.
If we'd wanted, we would have done it.
Right.
Yeah.
And the way that we can, the way that these children can access quantum information and bring it into present time cannot be underestimated. I know there was a child, I've had so many amazing and fascinating stories. One child is 6 years old, and he kept building cities on water. He had the whole city, he had to get a whole, I need water, and then he'd build it, and he's obsessed with it. And there's certain kids that they know what they're here to do.
He should talk to Kevin Costner, right? What that was that?
That's right.
Waterworld.
Waterworld, that was it. Yeah, Waterworld. Yeah.
Well, and it's the telegram tapes, right? Where the
telepathy
tapes. Sorry, the telepathy tapes, which
Kai Dickens,
has gone into great. They've gone into great detail to prove this, quote unquote, prove it, because we still live in this Newtonian scientific paradigm, that this is all true. It's not, you don't have to take the word of somebody who's been psychically connected for most of their life.
Right.
Science is showing that this is a thing. So
which is why even, when I was at AT&T internally, and they told me that the vision of AT&T was to help people connect anytime, anyway, anywhere they wanted to, I was like, well, that's not telephony, that's telepathy.
Right.
Well, you're just doing training wheels for telepathy here.
Right.
I get what you're doing. I can do this. That's why I knew I was in the right place. I was like, I totally understand
this. I get this, yeah. And I've not that long ago, I got this perspective that if you look at the arc, the historical arc of communication among humans, I mean, we're naturally moving to that. Like cell phones are sort of the last step.
Right.
Apple Watch is sort of the last step before I just go, hey, how about dinner, Therese? Right. And you just go, and then we just do it.
Yeah.
Right.
And we find all that to be mostly it's like, they can do that. And I've always said, some people are born Mozart, some people are not, but everybody can play the piano. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you're tone deaf, you can still play the piano. You all have. If we didn't have intuition, we'd be dead. And intuition has really two purposes. One is to keep us safe, like don't get on that train and don't get on that plane, and one is to support our creative purpose. That's the person you want to talk to. There's the place you want to go. That's the only two reasons we have intuition. And so when we befriend it and we say it's an intelligence, and then we understand that in this case, with multisensory intelligence, we have children showing us that have the capacity to use that intuition in very specific ways. The children who are imaginal, what I call imaginal, multisensory children who are typically diagnosed with ADHD, they're very much visual and image driven. So when people say, well, here's what's wrong with them, they can't sequence. And I'm like, well, wait a second here. Because first of all, if I show you a picture and I say, put that in order, what are you going to do with it? Uh-huh. They're perceiving through the lens of image. And multiple images in multiple dimensional realities, you try to do it.
You do.
Okay, secondly, as I do readings, and we talked about this earlier, I see, okay, that's the story I need to light up first. And so I'll tell the story, and it might make no sense at all, but someone resonates with it. This is where, this is what's happened, or this is what's going on. And then by the end of the reading, whether 60 or 90 minutes, at the end, I'm saying, okay, and I coherently can put that entire story together as to what's going on, what's the fear-based belief, where did it come from, why is it so persistent?
And why is that the first domino that needed to fall?
Why was that the first domino? So what am I doing? I am sequencing in wisdom form. It's a wisdom sequencing instead of a logical sequencing. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a higher order sequencing that these children are capable of, which is why I want to do the discovery labs with neuroscientists to say, okay, let's put the children in these and see what's possible. Not what's wrong, but what's possible.
Yeah.
Because I think they have so much more. And I have a very learned colleague. She's amazing. And she talked with a gentleman who was in his early 20s, diagnosed with autism. And she was saying, so how do you see this? And how do you feel about that? And he said, at the end, he was answering, and he said, why are you asking me these questions? She said, because I want to know. I think you're brilliant. I think you have all of this stuff to teach us. And he said, no one in my entire life has ever asked me any questions. God. I was like, well, there is the problem.
Let's start
the
there.
Pathology is there.
Yeah.
The pathology are the systems that decide to tell people with intelligence that they can't reach yet how to be in the world.
Right, because it doesn't fit the paradigm. It doesn't fit the
right.
Sit at a desk. I mean, how many years have we been in this educational system that teaches you to go in a little room, sit there for 50 minutes, ask to go to the bathroom,
sit, get, memorize.
Sit, get, memorize.
And sit, get, memorize because of AI is no longer relevant.
Yep,
so
right. It's going away.
And we're now asking them to fit a norm that's no longer relevant in a world that's completely different. And then I find it highly...
And pay $300,000 to do it, by the way.
Yes. And I find it fascinating that all of us are so educated, and we throw 28 screens at a child, whether they're in a restaurant or they're in a doctor's we're babysitting with them, or there's a television, and then we say, what's wrong with you that you're going so fast and you can't sit still and get stuff? It's like, what in the world are you thinking? Yeah. You surround with a context that has nothing to do with meditating and silence and getting and
going within.
And a relationship. And then you ask them why they're what you just taught them to be. Yeah. And then you want to medicate them so that they're different. I mean, it's absurd to me. The entire thing is absurd. I think, and now we're seeing, here's somebody who is labeled autistic, who's the youngest, I think he was the youngest sociology professor at Cambridge. And he didn't talk till he was 10, and he didn't do all of this stuff. And I thought, my mother, with 11 children, when one of the kids didn't talk until they were 5, said, he'll talk when he's ready.
Right.
I mean, I'm really honoring my mother with this multisensory stuff because
Yeah,
my mother was just like,
yeah.
he's an individual. When he is ready, he will do that. He is not ready right now, so he's
not going to do that.
We can help him, but that doesn't have anything to do with
Right.
self-esteem or who he is or what's wrong with him or what's right. He'll do it when he's ready. And I think that's what we're looking at our purpose in life energetically all the time, even though we don't know it.
Yeah.
And we look at something and it's like, well, where does that fit and what does that do? And we don't know how many parts of us are doing these multi-sensory ideas about what's happening.
Well, it's also, I think it's the unresolved fears of the parents being projected onto the children, because if they don't do X, Y, and Z by the time they're 1, 2, and 3, they're not going to get into Harvard. And if they don't get into Harvard, they're not going to make a lot of money. If they don't make a lot of money, they're not going to be happy. I mean, you can just on and on and on.
And so, yeah, it's the parents are really trying to protect their children by keeping them safe inside a paradigm that they know.
Right.
And they're encouraging them to be safe and to do the safe steps so they can be successful, because that's what they want for their children, because they love them. I mean, and that's the essence of what's happening. Is it may be based on a system they were born into, and they know what formula they needed to do and what they needed to suppress in order to survive, and that's what they want for their children, and so that's what they're offering. And I think to understand too that this is an act of love, even if it's based on the system they had to endure.
Yeah,
and the
they're
fears that came out
not
of
doing it. It's not a malice. It's
Right.
not being done with malice.
It's all about love.
It's all about it's their own programming. And
from what I see, because I look at ancestral patterns and other lifetimes, I see that a soul comes in and says, okay, I haven't resolved this one. I told myself I wouldn't forgive myself for that. Ooh, there's some parents that haven't forgiven themselves for the same thing. I'll pick that family. And then I'll have them be my shadow, and then I'll be real mad at them because they're showing me what and we'll do it all over again.
We'll do it all over again.
And at the same time, when a person decides that the buck stops here and they say, I choose to forgive, even though someone doesn't deserve it, even though the clear evidence
who gets to decide the deserving?
Yeah, exactly. Well,
right.
And what the evidence is what they did to me. There's no way that they deserve to be forgiven, and that's just true in this lifetime right now. And I'm going to choose to do it anyway. Yeah. I've watched an entire ancestral pattern be emancipated, and it's stunning on an energetic level.
7 up and 7 down, they say, right?
Yeah, it's like light. And it's all of these, and I've seen the ancestors waiting to see if they're going to accept it or not, because everyone has free will. So are they going to say, are they going to be it? Because when they say yes, that is a gift up, and also
back. You're
not going to attract a child with the same fear when it's your turn if you want to be a parent. So it's going to be a different soul.
Sure.
So it's very fascinating.
Amazing.
It's a whole, my book, life is one whole story. That's how I see it. Life is one whole story, even when there's different, it's this chaos theory that, when you make initial changes to the program in the computer, just small initial changes to the initial algorithm, it will begin to create an image like a butterfly, and then it will fill it in. But it will never go outside the butterfly, even though it will have all kinds of crazy ins and outs inside the butterfly that are created through the graphic of that algorithm. And that's how all of us are. I see every person has their own set of
their outline,
their purpose, and their set of lessons they came to learn.
Yeah, I think Ram Dass talks about terms in blue babies. There's souls that choose to incarnate into a being that's going to be in gestation for the 9 months or whatever, and come out stillborn. And there was a karmic reason for that baby to do that.
I've done readings for mothers who have had that experience, and I can bring the soul in and have her talk about where they were in another life and why what they hope this would give them in terms of the opportunities inside themselves to grow. And the pain of it is it's not to say, oh, this is just to grow, but even through the pain and the grief, there's something that opens, and that was an agreement, and we can name that so that at least what I've been told from them, many clients, is that the sting of that kind of grief goes away, even if they ache for the child. The ache remains, but
it's there.
The sting is gone, but the ache remains.
Because we're in the body, the veil is there.
Yes.
We don't,
Yes.
Because
we're human too.
Because we're human too.
I'll have to admit it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
So, for people to engage with you, you continue to do one-on-one readings, or you're you're doing the research. I mean, it's all of the above. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing lots of work with leaders in business, and I've also done. I continue to do work with individuals, but I spend a lot of my time devoted to this movement to change the conversation and the narrative around neurodiversity into multisensory intelligence, and I'm also doing a lot more mothers that have these children who also come in and become part of the groups that we have that are forming to have them talk. Can you imagine being a parent of one of these children that's able to talk to other mothers or fathers about, your kid likes art too, and do they love to do it in the middle of the forest? And isn't it
At
great
night,
how they
when it's raining?
and isn't it great when they do this? And this is the energy that they get to experience. But yeah, so
which has been missing because they're not talking about, hey, Bobby scored a goal in soccer.
Right.
Last night, because they're not in that world.
Exactly. So I'm spending time with that and this entire beautiful population, and I'm also continue to work in consciousness and business, because I think the conversations need to be understood there, because right now with the political climate, we need to say, well, what is the possibility for solving our global problems in a different way than we had arranged before? That when we get funding pulled at a federal level, let's make that a design element for innovation. Let's make that something that says, okay, if not that, then what? Right. And I love the innovation aspect of transformation in business, and so I continue to do that both strategically and with the leaders, and then I also do readings with individuals as well. But that's kind of the balance of the work these days.
I love it.
Yeah, it's about I've been so privileged with the gift. I consider it such a privilege to be able to see the world through everybody's eyes, and to have had tens of thousands of readings. And I feel like there is a body of work now that I understand that I want to leave as legacy, and that's where this desire in me comes to change the conversation globally about the intelligence of children and the intelligence of people, period, and stop pathologizing ourselves.
And the artificial intelligence, right?
Yes, and the AI, right?
Yeah, we touched on that in our prelude before we got on the air.
Yes, I'm doing a lot of courses actually in AI right now. I love it.
It's wild.
I love it because I'm always wanting to know, how do we take the raw material that we're given in the moment, in that point in history, and how do we infuse our values into it so it can be created into something that supports the love in the world and supports greater expansion and consciousness. And so I'm fascinated, and I can't be scared of it because I'm just so fascinated by it and all its positive potential.
Yeah, I mean, I read a really cool article the other day. It was a review of a history book talking about the time period between the late 1800s and the early, the 1910s. It was like 1880 to 1910, and the amount of change that if you had gone to sleep in 1884 and woke up in 1910, you had, automobiles and hamburgers and telephones, and there was this movement that said, with regard to bicycles and cars, people are moving too fast. Yes. They pathologized it, and especially women on bikes. They were dangerous. Women on bikes are still dangerous.
You don't know where they're going on those bikes. You just got to get out of their way.
And it was, and people were being, admitted to sanatoriums, and they were going crazy. And it was really, if you look at it, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And
lovely.
And it's the same thing. Like, horses went away, cars came out. It's okay.
Yeah. We're going to become, and we're going to die to that way of being.
Yeah.
And we're entering a new place.
We don't know what it is. We're in the in between.
Yeah. When I was working with Dory McWhorter, who's the CEO right now of the Chicago Executives Club of Chicago, she used to be the CEO of the YWCA and then the YMCA. But when we were working with her, I was working with her at the YWCA. It was about the language that allowed different questions to be asked. So when we were looking at programs for disadvantaged women at the beginning, we ended up talking about, if everyone and everything has value, then let's make the women ready for the marketplace and the marketplace ready for women. That was the first thing. It's a nonprofit, so the word marketplace was not even in the lexicon. But when we started to look at that, we ended up, and the YW created the first it was the first fund on the NASDAQ for nonprofits, where nonprofits had access to the capital markets.
Oh.
And it was called the Woman Fund. So they took 200 companies that did well on 19 criteria for the gender lens and put them in one portfolio so that you could invest in that. It's called the Woman Fund. And the Rockefeller Foundation funded the Impact Shares, who then helped create this fund. Morningstar was part of it, and Equileap, and they put it, and now it's $50 million in investment. And what happens is that instead of an advisory fee that you pay when you invest, going to, let's say,
To the
Impact
finance.
Share, it goes to the nonprofit.
Oh.
And then the nonprofit has because their
So they
mission,
split it up. It's a bundle of nonprofits.
So
Or it's a nonprofit
it's
entity.
It's one fund with 200 companies that do well on this
I see.
gender.
I
So
got it.
if you want to invest in that, then you pay a fee for your everybody pays a fee for that, and it goes to the Y.
nonprofit.
So then the Y has the opportunity to say to those 200 companies, "Let me help you expand your understanding of how that gender lens can work even better." Now you've expanded the mission of the nonprofit. We've created a social enterprise.
Beautiful.
So that's just one of the many things. And so the people that were called program directors are now called imagination officers, and the people who were, in strategic...
It's the languaging, like I said.
All of it. It gives you the license to ask different questions, to study different things, and to go in a different direction. So when we said this is economic development, not programs for women, in these things. And when Uber was Uber way back when, and they wanted 100 million. They wanted 1 million women in cars by 2020, and then all of a sudden, these women who were being given programs are now called a 200,000 woman consumer group. And so said to Uber, "Hey, we've got a 200,000 woman consumer group who would be benefited by having flexible hours because they need to get their kids to school. They may not be able to afford childcare, and so we'll help you, but you'll pay us to vet them, and the insurance company will pay us to make sure that is connected.
Yeah.
And we'll get, they wanted 5,000 women in cars in 6 months.
Okay.
And 15,000 women in cars were there in 3 months.
In 3 months.
And so
Because of this.
then Uber said, well, what else can we do with you? Because you're forwarding our business needs, and you're nonprofit, which is now a social enterprise.
Yeah.
So this is
because we create our reality through language.
Exactly. Language and operationalizing it in a way that respects different relationships than we did before.
Yeah.
In different hierarchies. Because, nonprofit used to be the little woman in the kitchen, and you pat her on the head and give her an allowance. And now we decided, well, let's try to make this into a social enterprise and see what else we can do.
Yeah.
So anyway, Dory did that with her team, and so I think everything is a design. And the one thing that was really important there was we loved and thought that the unknown was something to be positively appreciated and anticipated. Oh, the unknown's coming. All right, let's do it. What's the possibilities in the unknown?
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of what we do with the unknown typically as human beings. It's like fear.
Going to fear.
Well,
Yeah, and at the level of contrast and the things that I've been learning from the likes of Laura through her channels, and that it's be excited about whatever's happening.
yes.
Like I recently strained my back somehow in Pilates, and it seemed like it was getting better, and then it got worse when I did a workout yesterday, and I was there, laying in bed fighting it this morning, and I just stopped and I said, "Thank you. This is for my highest good. I'm learning something from this. I don't know what it is, but I'm learning." And it got better.
Yeah, it got
a little better.
That's great. And I always say, I insist, no matter what's happening, I insist this will make me stronger in love. I insist. I tell myself that. I insist.
Oh, that's great.
Because I'm talking to myself. I insist this
Right,
is going to
right.
make me stronger in love. And then when I'm experiencing things like loneliness, I'm like, okay, I'm going to call in every single other person in the world that feels lonely right now. And I'm going to ask for the light to come to us and tell us about that. But now I'm not alone because all the lonely people are with me, and we're in a crowded room. This is awesome, So
right.
it's like, how do I, help myself with this polarity that I can juggle to find love somewhere
In the moment.
And even with the tears and the pain, I ask every tear to be transmuted into love and sent as a blessing to people who are feeling sad in the way I'm feeling sad, or whatever the grief is, so that every moment can be grace and can be love and support for someone else. It doesn't have to be just my joy or just my pain.
Or just your pain.
It
yeah.
could be. I can be in the community of life.
And it takes you out of a victim mindset.
Yes. Sometimes.
Sometimes. 6 out of 10 doctors surveyed said,
No, it's just usually.
right. We are still human.
That's why we need each other. That's
Yeah.
why community is here. Can you help me, please? I cannot get myself out of this. Yeah,
Right.
help me.
The old picker up, the old bootstraps.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Therese. We covered an amazing amount of ground. It was so fun. I felt like we were in the quantum, kind of leaping around. That was
It was
great.
lovely. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. It was
Yeah.
really lovely to be in your company. You have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful architecture of love in so many different forms that it's
thank you.
just a delight to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it was great. It was amazing. Better than I could have ever hoped.
Me too. Thank
And
you.
I'll put your contact information in there so if people want to reach out to you. And I've got some people to connect to you because I think
lovely.
as you said, I was unusually interdimensionally connected.
Yes.
in some way that still not totally present to. But
It's very, and it has a lot of, there's such a texture to it too. You have texture, you have color, and you have architecture, and all of those interweave for you, and that helps the rest of us to be connected in ways that we would never have been and can't imagine until it happens. So thank you for that. in
the
advance.
ego likes that.
God bless the ego.
The ego. Yes, I'm special.
You are so special.
And gosh darn it, people like me.
And they do, and I like you too.
All right. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.